Chapter 8, Lesson 3. Disagreements Grow. What to know? What did colonists do when Parliament passed more tax laws? Explain why the colonists refused to accept the new laws passed by Parliament. Describe why fighting broke out at Lexington and Concord. And here are some words that you're going to practice on Quizlet. Monopoly, coerce, blockade, quarter, Congress, petition, Minutemen, revolution. You are there. The year is 1773. It's late at night and you're supposed to be asleep. You hear your father leave the house, quietly closing the door. Tonight he is going to a meeting with Samuel Adams. Your father said they should plan to teach the British a lesson. Your father said they plan to teach the British a lesson. Angry shouts have been heard in the streets and you're worried that your father may be hurt. He's promised to be careful, but all the same you lie wide awake until you hear him come home again. Fast fact: after the Boston Tea Party, shown here, colonists sang a new song. Rally Mohawks, bring out your axes, and tell King George we'll pay no taxes. The Boston Tea Party. Time: December 16, 1773. Place: Boston, Massachusetts. In 1773, Parliament passed the Tea Act, which gave Britain's East India Company a monopoly on tea. A monopoly is complete control of a good or service in an area by either a person or a group. As a result of this monopoly, only the East India Company could legally sell tea to the colonies, and it could sell tea for less than colonial merchants could. This meant colonial merchants could not make money in the tea trade. The British government believed the colonists would choose to buy the cheaper tea and pay the tax on it. Instead, many colonists decided to boycott tea. Ships carrying thousands of pounds of tea set sail for the colonies. In November 1773, 3 of the ships arrived in Boston Harbor. Against the wishes of many colonists, the Massachusetts governor sided with the British by allowing the ships to dock. More than 1,000 colonists in Boston protested. Many people think Samuel Adams planned what happened next. On the night of December 16, 1773, about 150 members of the Sons of Liberty dressed as Mohawk Indians and marched down to Boston Harbor. At the harbor, hundreds of people had gathered on the docks to watch the event. When the Sons of Liberty arrived, they boarded the ships, broke open 342 chests of tea, and threw it all overboard. Their angry protests became known as the Boston Tea Party. So what caused the colonists to take part in the Boston Tea Party? The Coercive Acts. Please set up your Cornell notes like this on the left side. The Coercive Acts. The Boston Tea Party greatly angered British leaders. In March 1774, Parliament passed a new set of laws to punish the Massachusetts colonists. The colonists called these laws the Coercive Acts because people were coerced or forced to obey the laws. One law closed the port of Boston until the colonists paid for the destroyed tea. To enforce this law, Parliament ordered the British Navy to blockade Boston Harbor. British warships stopped other ships from entering or leaving the harbor. To punish the colonists further, Britain stopped the Massachusetts legislature from making any laws. It put the colony under the control of British General Thomas Gage and banned all town meetings not approved by him. Britain also ordered the colonists to feed and house British soldiers. This order required colonists to quarter the soldiers, even if they didn't want to. Many colonists said the new laws were intolerable. As a result, the laws also came to be known as the Intolerable Acts. The harshness of these laws led many colonists to feel that Britain was now their common enemy. Not all British leaders agreed with these laws. In April 1774, Edmund Burke said to Parliament, quote, "You will force them to buy taxed goods? Has 7 years' struggle yet been able to force them?" However, Parliament ignored Burke's request for cooperation. So why did Parliament pass the Coercive Acts? Democratic values, citizenship. So if you haven't added this to your Cornell notes, this is a good thing to do. These text boxes have their own information that's important. It's related to the running text, but it doesn't follow it completely. Democratic values. The right to privacy is one of our most valued rights in the United States today. The English Bill of Rights guaranteed British citizens certain rights, including the right to privacy in one's own home. Soldiers and other government officials were not allowed to enter a home without the owner's permission or a warrant from a court of law. As more British soldiers were sent to North America, however, the British government needed more places for them to live. Some British soldiers took over colonist homes and lived there without the owner's permission. Many colonists were forced to take British soldiers into their homes. That's the Quartering Act. Okay, there's a nice timeline in your book. You should check that out. The First Continental Congress. So set up your Cornell notes. The First Continental Congress. People in Britain worried about the unrest in the colonies. In June 1774, William Pitt, a member of Parliament, asked British leaders to be patient by saying, "I would advise the noble lords in office to adopt a more gentle way of governing America." In the colonies, many people feared that Britain might take stronger action to enforce its rule. In September 1774, representatives of the colonies met in Philadelphia to discuss how to respond to Britain. Because it was the first meeting of its kind on the North American continent, it was later called the First Continental Congress. A Congress is a formal meeting of representatives. The delegates decided to send a signed request to the king. This petition stated their basic rights as British citizens. It said that the colonists had the right to life and liberty, the right to assemble or gather together, and the right to a trial by jury, which are rights English citizens have. Congress set May 10th, 1775 as the deadline for Parliament to respond. Also, Congress stopped most trade with Britain and asked the colonies to form militias. So small local military groups, militias. What did the petition sent by the First Continental Congress ask for? Lexington and Concord. Paul Revere's route, the British Army's route. And here we go. Charleston, Medford, Lexington, Concord, little fires here, the first battles. Okay, and the British routes. Lexington and Concord, April 1775. Colonists in Massachusetts quickly organized militia units. They were called Minutemen because they were said to be ready to fight at a minute's notice. In April 1775, General Gage heard that Samuel Adams and John Hancock, two leaders of the Sons of Liberty, were meeting in Lexington. Gage also heard that the Minutemen were storing weapons in nearby Concord. He ordered more than 700 British soldiers to march to Lexington and Concord. They were to arrest Adams and Hancock and find the weapons. The British wanted their march to Lexington to be a secret. However, Paul Revere, a member of the Sons of Liberty, found out about the plan and rode to Lexington to warn Adams and Hancock. When the British arrived in Lexington, the Minutemen were waiting for them. The leader of the Minutemen, John Parker, ordered his troops to stand their ground, meaning don't back down, stand your ground. He shouted, "Don't fire unless fired upon, but if they mean to have war, let it begin here." No one knows who fired first, but shots rang out. Call it the shot heard round the world. 8 Minutemen were killed, and several others were wounded. The British then marched to Concord, but the weapons they expected to find had been moved. So the statue of Paul Revere stands near the Old North Church in Boston. 2 lanterns were hung in the church tower to signal British plans to cross the Charles River by boat. As the British returned to Boston, the Minutemen fired at them from nearby woods and fields. By the time the British arrived in Boston, 73 had been killed and 174 wounded. Fewer than 100 colonists had been killed or wounded. The poet, Ralph Waldo Emerson, later called the shots fired at Lexington and Concord the shot heard round the world. The shot heard round the world. The fighting marked the first step in creating the United States of America, and it was the beginning of a long, bitter war called the American Revolution. A revolution is a sudden, complete change of government. So what caused the fighting at Lexington and Concord? In summary, after the Boston Tea Party, Parliament passed laws to punish the colonists. The First Continental Congress sent the king a petition arguing for the rights of colonists. Battles at Lexington and Concord marked the start of war between Britain and the 13 colonies. In review, what did colonists do when Parliament passed more laws? How did the Coercive Acts affect trade in Boston? And what was Paul Revere's role in fighting at Lexington and Concord? And if you need a creative challenge, look at number 6. Write a poem about the events of the battles of Lexington and Concord.